She was only 22 years old, blonde, young, soft-spoken, and by the end of World War II, prisoners claimed they feared her more than the men running the camps. Some called her the beautiful beast. Others called her the hyena of Auschwitz. But what made Irma Grese truly terrifying wasn't just the violence, it was how normal she looked while doing it. Witnesses described her smiling while selecting people for the gas chambers, laughing during beatings, walking through camps with a pistol at her hip and a whip in her hand. And when the war finally ended, the Allies uncovered one of the darkest stories of the entire Holocaust, because behind the gates of Auschwitz, a 22-year-old woman had become one of the most feared guards in Nazi Germany. This is the story of Irma Grese. Irma Grese was born in 1923, inside rural Germany. At first, her childhood seemed ordinary, but behind closed doors, her family life was collapsing. Her mother struggled with severe depression. Then one day, when Irma was just 13 years old, her mother drank hydrochloric acid and killed herself. And according to historians, something inside Irma changed after that. She became distant, cold, obsessed with Nazi ideology. At the same time, Germany itself was changing. Adolf Hitler was rising to power. The Nazi Party promised strength, order, and purpose. Millions followed him, including young Irma Grese. She dropped out of school early, took jobs around Germany. Then eventually, she volunteered for the SS, and that decision would place her directly inside one of the most horrifying systems in human history. At just 19 years old, Irma Grese entered Ravensbrück, the largest female concentration camp in Nazi Germany. This was where female SS guards were trained, not just to supervise prisoners, but to dominate them, humiliate them, break them psychologically, and witnesses later claimed. Irma adapted disturbingly fast. Former prisoners described her as unusually cruel even among Nazi guards. But Ravensbrück was only the beginning. Soon, she was transferred somewhere far worse. Auschwitz, the deadliest concentration camp in history. Over 1 million people would die there, most inside gas chambers disguised as showers. And inside Auschwitz, Irma Grese gained power, real power. Every day at Auschwitz, trains arrived packed with prisoners, men, women, children, families torn apart within seconds. And according to survivors, Irma Grese often stood beside SS doctors during selections, pointing left or right, life or death. Those too weak to work were sent directly to the gas chambers, and witnesses later testified she appeared to enjoy it. One survivor claimed Grese beat prisoners randomly with a braided whip. Another described her releasing starving dogs onto inmates. Others said she kicked women to death with heavy boots. But what disturbed survivors most was her appearance. She looked young, healthy, almost cheerful, and that contrast made everything worse. Because evil wasn't arriving as a monster. It arrived smiling. By 1944, Irma Grese had become senior supervisor over thousands of female prisoners. She was only 21 years old, but survivors claimed her cruelty escalated constantly. Public beatings became normal, executions became entertainment. Prisoners described hearing screams echo through the barracks at night. Some women reportedly fainted whenever Grese appeared nearby, and according to testimony, she carried both a pistol and a whip almost everywhere she went. Then came the death marches. As Allied forces closed in, the Nazis began evacuating camps. thousands of starving prisoners were forced to march through freezing conditions. Anyone too weak to continue was shot, and Grese stayed with the transports until the very end. In 1945, Irma Grese arrived at Bergen-Belsen, and conditions there were catastrophic. Bodies covered the ground, disease spread uncontrollably, food barely existed. British soldiers who liberated the camp later described it as a vision of hell itself. More than 10,000 unburied corpses were found when Allied troops entered, and among the guards captured alive was Irma Grese. She was only 22. British soldiers were stunned. Many expected hardened old men, not a young woman who looked almost ordinary. But survivor testimonies quickly revealed who she really was. And soon, she became one of the most infamous defendants of the post-war trials. September 1945. The world finally saw Irma Grese in court, and reporters immediately noticed something unsettling. She showed almost no emotion, no visible guilt, no remorse. Witness after witness described horrifying abuse, beatings, murders, selections for death, starvation, torture. Former prisoners directly pointed at Grese inside the courtroom. Some broke down crying while testifying. But Grese denied many accusations. At times, she even appeared irritated rather than ashamed. And newspapers became obsessed with her. Not just because of the crimes, but because she was young, attractive, female. People struggled to understand how someone who looked so normal could participate in industrialized murder. But the evidence was overwhelming, and eventually, the verdict arrived: death by hanging. December 13th, 1945. Irma Grese was led to the gallows inside Hamelin prison. She was 22 years old, one of the youngest women executed under British law in the 20th century. Witnesses said she walked calmly, confidently, almost casually. Then, moments before execution, she reportedly said one final word, quickly. Seconds later, the trapdoor opened, and one of the most feared women of Nazi Germany disappeared into history. But the nightmare she helped create never truly ended, because survivors carried those memories for the rest of their lives. What makes Irma Grese so disturbing isn't just the violence. History is full of violent people. It's the fact she looked ordinary, young, human, and yet, inside Auschwitz, that humanity vanished. The story of Irma Grese shattered a comforting illusion, the illusion that evil always looks monstrous. Sometimes it looks normal, sometimes it smiles, and sometimes it's only 22 years old. That's why the world still remembers her. Not because she was the most powerful Nazi, or the deadliest, but because she became proof that ordinary people can become part of unimaginable horrors. And inside the camps of Nazi Germany, that horror became reality. And most importantly, we need to remember the victims. Real people lost their lives in these camps, and they should never be forgotten. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more dark history stories. Thank you for watching.